Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a topic that can feel, let's be honest, a little intimidating for a lot of people, but it's absolutely vital for any manager to get a handle on: finance. And I want you to stop thinking of it as complicated math. Instead, think of it as the language your business speaks every single day. Sound familiar? You're at a big meeting, a chart full of numbers goes up on the screen, and you're just nodding along, hoping, praying that nobody asks you a direct question about it. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. It's a huge source of anxiety for so many smart, capable managers who just don't come from a finance background.
But we're going to change that right here. In this explainer, we're cracking open Pierre Cabanet's amazing guide for managers, The Essentials of Finance. Our goal is to take those core concepts and turn all that confusion into real confidence. By the end, you won't just understand the numbers, you'll know how to use them to lead. Okay, let's dive in.
So, where do you even begin? Well, the first step in any journey is figuring out your starting point, right? And in business, that means answering one fundamental question: where are we right now? And luckily, there are two key documents that give us the answer. The best way to think about this is with a really simple analogy. Think of the balance sheet as a photograph. It's a static snapshot of your company's financial health on one single day. The income statement, though, that's the movie. It shows you the action, the story of how the company performed over a whole period, like a year, that led up to that snapshot. Now, the balance sheet, that snapshot, is built on a really powerful equation. On one side, you have all the stuff the company owns, its assets. Cash, equipment, buildings. On the other side, you have where the money for that stuff came from. It was either funded by debt, money you owe to someone else, your liabilities, or it came from the owner's own pockets, which is the equity. It's simple. Everything you have came from somewhere. And here's that movie we were talking about. The income statement tells the story of your year. It starts with the opening scene, all the money that came in, your revenue. Then you subtract all the costs of making that happen. And the final scene, that's the big reveal, the bottom line. Did you make a profit or did you take a loss? It's the ultimate summary of your performance.
Okay, so once you know exactly where you are, the next logical question is, well, where are we going? This is where we shift from looking at the past to planning for the future. It's about setting a direction.
And your roadmap to the future? That's the business plan. It's not just some document you write for investors. It forces you to get your thinking straight. You've got to nail your big idea, the elevator pitch. You have to understand the market you're playing in. You need a game plan for how you're actually going to sell your stuff. You've got to highlight the team that's going to make it all happen. And, crucially, you have to back it all up with numbers that show this whole thing can actually work.
But hang on, a business plan, that's a long-term vision, right? It's for the next few years. So how do you take that big dream and make it real for this year? That is where the budget comes in. And it's so much more than just a list of expenses.
See, a budget isn't just about putting limits on spending. It's an incredibly powerful tool for managers. First, it coordinates everyone. It makes sure marketing, sales, and operations are all rowing in the same direction. Second, it motivates people by giving them clear, concrete targets to hit. And third, it gives you control. It's your baseline, so you can measure how you're doing, and, if you're off track, you know you need to correct your course. Right? You know your starting point, you know your destination. The final big question is a tactical one. How do we get there? This is all about getting the fuel for the journey, the capital, to power your plans.
Essentially, you have two main options to fund your growth. You can use your own money, that is, the profits the company makes that you decide to reinvest back into the business, that's internal financing. Or you can get money from the outside. That could mean borrowing from a bank, which is debt, or selling a small piece of the company to investors, which is equity.
And that choice, especially the decision to take on debt, brings us to one of the most powerful and, honestly, kind of mind-blowing concepts in finance. It's called the leverage effect. Let me show you how this works.
Okay, check this out. It's pretty wild. You have two identical companies. They both have $100,000 in assets, and they both make $20,000 in profit. But Company A is funded entirely by its owners. They get a solid 20% return on their money. Not bad. Now look at Company B.
The owners only put in $20,000 and they borrowed the other $80,000. Now, even after they pay interest on that debt, the profit they have left is measured against their tiny initial investment. The result? A jaw-dropping 62% return. That's leverage, using other people's money to turbocharge your own returns.
So, you get the funding. Great. But that's only half the battle. Now you have to spend it wisely. And that, my friends, is the investment decision. It's about taking that precious capital and putting it into projects, like a new machine or a big marketing push that you truly believe will create value and bring in even more cash later on.
So you have a few different project ideas. How do you choose the winner? You've got a few key tools in your belt. The simplest is the payback period. How fast do we get our initial cash back? Then there's net present value, or NPV. This asks a much smarter question. Since €1 today is worth more than €1 next year, does this project create more real value than it costs? If the answer is yes, it's a go. And finally, you have the internal rate of return, or IRR. This boils everything down to one single percentage. It's the project's exact return, which means you can compare it to other projects, apples to apples. So let's just pull all this together. We've talked about figuring out where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to fuel the trip. The big takeaway from all of this is that finance isn't some passive, backward-looking thing. No, it's the active, forward-looking steering mechanism for the whole company.
And what are the actual gauges on your dashboard that you use to steer? They're called ratios. A ratio is a brilliantly simple tool. It just takes two different numbers from your financial statements and divides one by the other to tell you a meaningful story. It turns all that raw data into powerful insight.
For example, let's take profit margin. A 10% margin tells you instantly how efficient your company is. It means for every €100 in sales that come in the door after you pay for everything, you get to keep €10 as pure profit. It's a crystal clear indicator of your profitability.
Or how about this one? Return on equity. A 25% return here tells you how well the company is using the owner's money. For every €100 the owners have put into the business, the company is generating €25 in profit. It's the ultimate report card for how well you're creating value for your shareholders.
So, after all this, what do you think? Is finance just about dusty spreadsheets and complicated accounting rules? Or is it something much more powerful? Is it, in fact, the steering wheel of the entire company, the navigation system that guides every single strategic move you make?
You know, Pierre Caban, the author we've been leaning on, he just says it perfectly. The whole point of getting a handle on finance isn't to become an accountant. It's to enable a management style that's operational, that cuts across all departments, that's human, and that is, at the end of the day, in service of one thing, driving growth. And that is a language every manager needs to speak.